Modern writing advice is garbage, or at least most of it is. And to be fair, so is a lot of older writing advice. This isn't because the people giving it lack the expertise, or the points being made are bad ones. So why is it then that many things writers would regard as a foundational quote-unquote rules are still hot button topics for debate, and things that confuse and frustrate newer writers even with today's wealth of writing craft resources? I'm Dylan King, a fantasy and sci-fi author, and welcome to what I hope is the beginning of a discussion on a topic that's been on my mind a lot: the decline of modern writing advice. Now, I hope you can forgive the incredibly clickbaity title. I hope that as I talk and sort of explain my point of view, you'll see that it both had a purpose in regards to illustrating my point and wasn't meant with any kind of malice towards other people who are producing writing advice content. I watch an awful lot of writing advice and craft YouTube videos, read articles, all those kinds of things, and what I'm saying isn't meant as a direct criticism of those people. I don't think it is most creators' fault that there has been, in my opinion, a decline in the quality of writing advice. But I do think it's something that needs to be talked about, at least to bring about a discussion. And I'm kind of hoping you'll see what I mean as we go on. I think that as writers learning our craft, we have a huge amount of information available to us thanks to the internet, but that has come with its own downsides and negatives, and I think it's that medium of the internet which is the kind of root of the problems that we now have, and I think it's having a big impact both on the quality of new stories and just how easy it is for new writers to find good and effective advice that explores topics soundly and clearly. Either way, let's kind of delve into it and hopefully you'll see what I mean. Now, the meat and potatoes of what I'm talking about really is focused around how writing advice is delivered, and has been for a good long while now. I don't know about most of you, but for me, if I'm looking for knowledge on a particular writing topic, my first port of call is YouTube, and if not, Google and the internet and certain websites and things like that in the first place. The problem that we have though is that how successful different creators are who produce writing advice depends on the algorithms, and the algorithms favor specific kinds of content with specific titles and specific kind of lengths and things like that. Now, the vast majority of people creating writing content on YouTube are themselves writers who are intending to use this platform to help bolster their own writing careers and their ability to sustain themselves through writing related activities. Quite honestly, I'm no different. That's exactly what this channel is to me. It's a way of hopefully having fun with some of my writing and talking about something that I'm passionate about and things like that, but also eventually, hopefully, supplementing my writing income to the point where I can sustain my family and home and bills whilst writing and being an author as my full-time job. However, that creates an issue with regards to the quality and accuracy of the writing advice that writing content creators are producing. As writers who are producing content on YouTube, we have this challenge of creating content that not only hits with an audience, but also appeases the algorithm. And in my opinion, and from what I've seen, this pressure has led to a proliferation of bite-sized, one-size-fits-all writing advice that prioritizes catchiness over substance. People are forced to, well, not forced, but people, because they are wanting to find success on this platform, are incentivized to chase views at the expense of nuance and complexity. It only takes searching writing advice or how to write a book or those kinds of things to find your one rule every writer must follow or the 5 secrets to instant KDP success. The internet is absolutely flooded with simplistic formulaic writing tips that promise quick fixes and overnight kind of success. Now, that's the very worst of it, but there's also plenty of well-meaning and experienced writers who are forced to kind of alter their content to fit the algorithm. Videos about show don't tell, or the use of adverbs, or using save the cat to quickly and easily plot your novel. All of these kinds of things are good, sound advice that, because of YouTube at certain points in its lifespan having, for example, 10-minute or so videos favoured in the algorithm and things like that, and videos with a certain kind of title and a certain kind of thumbnail being more successful than others, mean that you need to produce a certain kind of video to have them be seen by anybody. As fiction writers and fiction readers, we know that storytelling is an art form that thrives on complexity and nuance. Yet, in exchange for the potential to go viral, or even just the success of views and subscribers, what we're running the risk of doing in making these kinds of videos is oversimplifying the intricacies of writing. And this can leave newer writers confused and disillusioned. This is why this video, and hopefully the subsequent series of videos that I'm kind of planning, have been titled Modern Writing Advice is Garbage. It is clickbait, and it's an exaggerated opinion designed to get you to click on this video at the expense of all the nuance and complexity of the actual point being made. Of course, something like show don't tell isn't bad advice, but it is when reduced to a catchy slogan, or worse, a steadfast rule that everybody has to follow all the time. If you were to rigidly show don't tell, you would wind up with a really terrible and boring story. However, more and more writing advice and craft discussion is difficult concepts being boiled down to a bare bones tagline, because slogans generate clicks, and people who really want success in an incredibly difficult and competitive area and space are always looking for shortcuts and ways they can get there faster. We've all been there as writers, and if we're being honest, sometimes still fall into that trap in looking for the easy way out or an easy way to success. I know I certainly do, even now. Now, I've made this point before in discussions with other writers, and the thing that's always brought as a counter-argument, continuing with show don't tell as the example, is that, yeah, well, everybody knows that when we say show don't tell, we mean show don't tell most of the time, or show don't tell when it's the right time. But I would argue that these videos are being made for brand new writers who have had a good amount of experience, have heard show don't tell and understand what it means, and have had lots of practice with it, and are at a certain point in their journey of understanding how to use it really effectively, and when to show and when to tell and all those kinds of things. But the people who are really searching for what is show don't tell and how do I use it and how does it apply to my writing, they're people who don't know what it means. So when you produce a video that's all about show don't telling, they come away from it incredibly confused, because when they go away and try to apply always showing and never telling, they write a really bad story, and then they do that with all the other sort of writing advice that's distilled down to catchy slogans, and wonder why their story is getting worse rather than better, and why the feedback is getting worse rather than better, because according to the advice they're doing everything right. The problem is that these brand new writers need detailed and good quality explanations, and the algorithm unfortunately doesn't favour those things as much, or at least it didn't. I think it's maybe getting better, but I'm not seeing that improvement in terms of like the writing craft videos and things like that I see on YouTube. It's still top 10 advice, and show don't tell, and never use adverbs, and cut these filter words, without the complexities of why and when you should do these things and follow these rules. And the difficulty is I think that this is also having a knock-on effect on the quality of stories and fiction that we're getting across the board. I think that a lot of these kind of writing advice rules have this effect of stifling creativity and individuality. And I think a lot of writing is becoming more and more homogenized. And I think this is difficult because we're risking losing really amazing, diverse voices and unique perspectives. I think a prime example of this is the rise of the Save the Cat plot structure being used as a kind of go-to example of how to structure your story for people who are heavy plotters. And obviously I want to make it clear that using Save the Cat to do that, to plot your story ahead of writing, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but almost none of those videos or resources or articles that I've seen recommending you use Save the Cat to plot your story, out of all of them, there are very few, if any, I've seen that mention that Save the Cat was designed as a way to plot doctor the story that you've already written, or at least originally it was a screenplay thing that was adapted to writing fiction. The intended use of it is to, okay, you've written your story or you've plotted your story, but you know there's a problem. Let's apply the Save the Cat in reverse and figure out what beat is missing or what beat there is a problem with that we need to maybe look at how it's affecting the story structure, right? But using it in reverse as a way of plotting your story, you run the risk of basically creating a carbon copy of 100 other stories because they all use the same plot structure. It's easy, but it's not better. Again, there's not necessarily a problem with doing this, but you need to be aware of these risks of negative impact on your story. But all too many people are keen to promote something like Save the Cat as a kind of use this and your story structure is going to be smashing, right? There's thousands of ways to structure your story that don't involve 3-act structure or the hero's journey or Save the Cat. Loads of really interesting stories that use different ways of structuring, and if you start from one of the existing templates like Save the Cat, then you're cutting yourself off from all of these other kind of avenues of creativity unless you're aware of that risk. And the writing advice that recommends using these types of things so often leave out the potential for that risk. So brand new writers go in and saying, oh cool, I've got this really amazing plot structure tool here and I'm just going to use it and I'm going to follow it and I'm not going to deviate because this is the way that you should do it, this is the way it's supposed to happen. And it's a totally understandable response and it's a totally understandable impulse, because when you first hear about Save the Cat, and I was the same when I first heard about it, I'd written a few stories at that point, and when I first I bought the book, and immediately the first thing I did was I plotted my next story through it, and I got 2/3 of the way through it before I had to stop and think about why I was feeling so constrained when I hadn't before. And it was because I was trying to shoehorn everything into this structure, and for a while I thought it was because that was my failure, that it wasn't because Save the Cat doesn't work for every story, or that you're not supposed to use it as this is the template for everything that is good. The story must be really bad because I can't get it to work inside a Save the Cat structure, or I can, it's just not what I want to write and it's not a very good story and I'm losing all my inspiration or desire to write this particular story. The difficulty we have is videos that say, here's Save the Cat, this really great tool, but to use it properly you still have to go away and do all that hard work and diligence on learning plot structure and character arcs and character development and story arcs and plots and plot progress and payoffs and promises and how to do pacing and all these kinds of things. Those videos don't generate the clicks as, here's the plot structure you should follow for a smash hit book. Again, that's the worst kind of clickbaity title, but you kind of get the point that I'm driving at, is the success of these writing advice YouTube videos and articles depends on their appeal to the algorithm and people's desire to click on that kind of thing. And people generally don't want to click on things that say, this is going to really suck, it's going to be loads of hard work and blow, but here's something that might help a little bit. They're much more inclined to click on, here is the solution to the problems that you've been already struggling with for ages. And I think that's a problem that's getting worse over time and will continue to do so if it's not addressed. I think it really sucks to be told, yeah, you're probably going to have to write like 10, 15 novels before you write one that's good, or before you've understood enough about writing to write one that's good. Obviously there are always exceptions to those kinds of rules, but it does seem to be the kind of rough number that a lot of famous authors kind of have said. I know I can throw from memory Brandon Sanderson out there as somebody who, I think he said he'd written 9 full-length fantasy novels before he sold Elantris. One of those was Way of Kings, but he had to go back and redraft that. But you have to do that work to be able to understand and to have a good grasp on all of these kinds of things about writing. And a lot of writing advice, videos and these kinds of things, content, kind of gives the impression that if you just watch enough of these videos, you'll know how to do it. And it's just not the case. The trouble is those videos also happen to be really, really appealing. I've fallen into the trap plenty of times on thinking I can understand something just by watching a video and then throwing it in to my writing, and it just doesn't work. You have to write it and then rewrite it and then maybe shelf it and then go and write something else and realize that you hadn't gotten it. You were just at the very beginning of getting it, and it takes time and work and a whole lot of effort. You know, I think most people are not naive enough to think that creating a writing career won't take that, but the kinds of advice and videos that kind of proliferate the internet can give that impression. And there are plenty of people that I've spoken to and seen the comments of and have heard saying that even after all of these videos, they're still confused by things like show, don't tell, or don't use adverbs. Thank you, Stephen King. Because how the hell do you write without telling? How the hell do you write without adverbs? And the fact is you don't. You have to tell. You have to use adverbs. They're not always bad, and in fact a lot of the time they're not bad, they're good. But you have to know when, and you have to learn to understand when, and those are the bits that are the most important bits that don't wind up in videos and writing advice articles and things like that, because it's difficult to explain, it's complicated. In a kind of brief conclusion, I think the decline of modern writing advice is a symptom of what YouTube and the internet is today, in sort of chasing the algorithm and chasing people clicking on your videos. But I think as writers and as people learning to write, both the people who are making these kinds of content and the people who are consuming it, we have to kind of make a concerted effort to not just take somebody's word for it and not just chase the easy kind of fix. No matter how tempting it seems or how good it seems on first look, there's almost always something more to it. And if it worked like it seems like it works, everybody would be doing it and everybody would be a famous writer. For my part, I'm hoping this will be the kind of introduction to a series of videos that I'm planning to do in an attempt to kind of help with this problem and hopefully sort of make things easier for newer writers and people who are writing their first couple of stories and have heard all of these rules and are trying to follow them all desperately and are pulling their hair out trying to work out how to do that and still write a story that's actually interesting to read. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to tackle each of these concepts at a time. So do like show don't tell as a video and actually do a proper deep dive on what show don't tell is and what it means and when to use it and when not to use it, at least from my experience and what I understand it, and hopefully without sort of presenting myself as some ultimate authority on it, because writing's not like that. And then go through sort of adverbs, plot structures, like all of these different kinds of like big writing advice areas and addressing the kind of problems that I feel like I've seen there, that I think a lot of experienced writers just kind of take it as read that everybody understands it, and newer writers are pulling their hair out trying to understand it when they're only being given half the information, if that. Anyway, thank you for listening if you've made it this far, and hopefully you found it helpful or it's maybe given you something to think about. If you did find it helpful, please consider doing the like and subscribe thing. It really helps. If you didn't find it helpful, I guess tell me that too. I'm more than happy to like have discussions and things like that in the comments. So yeah, tell me what you think and whether you'd actually like to see those extra videos. Until next time.